The Witcher mutations completely change a person. Amongst the most notable changes is, as you probably know, the lack of emotions. The cat school, however, doesn't strip their Witchers of emotions. Instead, they make them feel stronger. In a way, the cat school was founded twice. The first time was a few months or years after the school of the bear was founded. A group of Witchers stole mutagens and everything they needed to create Witchers from Castle Morcraig, which at the time was the home keep of the Order of Witchers. And they snuck out at night, silently. They aimed to create a new Witcher school, one which would demand more respect from peasants, as they didn't want to be treated badly anymore like the other Witchers. 20 young Witchers left the Order, seeking to found a new school, the School of the Cat. They did this in Ebbing, in Stygia Castle. It however seemed that while young Witchers had ideas about what they wanted to change from the mutations, the Witchers themselves seemed to didn't really have much of a hand in the creation of new Witchers, as the castle itself seemed to be quickly run by mages, working on the mutations of the young boys. The young boys that were taken to Stygia Castle were not treated like they were human at all. The mages saw them as lab rats, and thus when a batch of Witchers was created that instead of being more emotionless, had the emotions enhanced, they decided the Witchers were faulty. The mages wanted to know what their mistakes were, and therefore they would experiment on these Witchers, torturing them, bisecting them, cutting them open, after which they would discard their bodies. But amidst the bodies they dumped was one Witcher who managed to survive, Gesras of Leda. Gesras was a half-elf, and was seen as abomination by his parents. He was sold to the mages at Stygia, where he was supposed to become a Witcher. As the mutations happened to him, his emotions became stronger, and one of the emotions he felt for the mages who had put him through pain and torture was anger. Gesras wanted revenge, but first he had to make his way back into Stygia Castle to save the others like him from being cut open by the mages. Similar to how the first Witchers snuck out of Castle Morcraig, Gesras and his fellow Witchers snuck out of Stygia Castle. They had to find a new place to call home, somewhere to create Witchers. The Cat Witchers sought to find this place in the north, all whilst hiding from the other Witchers of the schools, as they didn't want to be found. Eventually, Gesras and his band of Witchers would join a group of Anshe elves, who offered refuge in exchange for help in guerrilla warfare. For a few years they worked together, collaboration largely made possible due to Gesras being half-elf. But the Witchers weren't safe. Mages from Stygia Castle were on the hunt for them, as they wanted the test subjects back. The cats were well aware that the mages were tracking them down, and they knew that sooner or later they would have to deal with them. Therefore, after a few years of hiding underground, the Cat Witchers found themselves prepared to deal with the ones who had created and abused them. In the darkness of night, the Witchers went into Stygia Castle, where Gesras would finally get his revenge, as they slew all the mages in their sleep, showing no mercy to those who had tortured him. With the Cat Witchers finally free, with no one coming after them anymore, they decided it would be best to leave Stygia Castle. At this point in time, there were still Witchers from the original Cat School alive. Upon hearing what happened at Stygia Castle, most of them quickly returned to their home. However, local kings had heard the news as well, and whilst they didn't know the difference between the two branches of the Cat School, they had enough of the Cat Witchers killing their soldiers and men. The kings and rulers gathered an army to drive out the cats once and for all. The original Cat Witchers didn't know what was about to happen, as suddenly there was an army at the gates of their keep. The fighting would last for 3 days, but in the end, all the Witchers who were present at the castle were dead. This would now mark the start of the Dean Marv era of the cat school. The cats had no place to call home and no keep to sleep in, and thus the Dean Marv caravan was founded. The caravan would travel across lands, training new witchers, with a specific focus on agility, stealth and balance. During their training, these young boys would have an altogether different task to complete compared to the other witcher schools. Most schools, in a way, would have their students try to survive areas with monsters, seek them out even. But the School of the Cat final trial would involve no blood being spilled, other than that of the student. Over time, the young cats would walk across a rope line. The line would at first be close to the ground, but over time the height would increase, until the final trial, in which the cat witchers would have to walk blindfolded across a rope so high that a single misstep would mean their death. Once they had completed their trial, the young boys would now officially become witchers of the cat school, and they would travel the continent, slaying monsters and men for coin. But not every witcher grew up in Stega Castle, or in Dean Marv. Some came from Kaer Morhen, Kaer Seren, Hern Kadug, and even Gorthur Gevad. The cat school would take in witchers from the other schools, when they would be cast out as failed mutations. As a result, the number of cat witchers grew pretty rapidly, and wherever they went, they destroyed any positive thoughts people had about witchers. It was mostly due to the deeds of cat school witchers and their ruthless killing of humans that witchers weren't trusted by peasants. Tales would spread across the continent of massacres like the one that happened in Yelo, where the witcher Brehen slew humans. Because of their actions, no witcher would give them shelter. They didn't trust them, and for good reason, as the cats had a habit of betrayal due to some violent impulses. The caravan of Dean Marv would keep wandering for presumably more than 100 years before it would meet its end. A short time before 1272, the caravan would be attacked. Presumably when Nilfgaard invaded the north during the Third Northern War, they had found the Dean Marv caravan and decided to put an end to the murderous witchers. It was either Nilfgaard that found them, or it was Radovid, it's not quite sure, but soldiers attacked the caravan. The Dean Marv caravan would be completely destroyed, and a few witchers who were present died, fled, or have their status unknown. The remaining cat witchers would have to find different homes for themselves. As while their school, in a way, was the last to fall, the school hadn't really had a real home for centuries. Some cats made hideouts of their own, others joined criminal bands, and some tried to reunite with what was left of their school. After a few years of the cat school being disbanded, it seemed like a few cat witchers had gotten back together to possibly rebuild the school. Their plans, however, quickly came to an end, as a cat witcher named Alexander killed a fellow witcher who was carrying Grandmaster armor diagrams, in the hopes that he could sell them to start a new life, to be free of his fate as a witcher. This betrayal would have most likely torn up the school of the cat even further, as they couldn't even trust their own. A few witchers remain of the cat school, but not many. Alexander would be killed by bandits. Brehen would most likely die to the Striga. Kian was tormented and possessed by a demon before being slain by Geralt. Geralt could also possibly end the life of Gaetan. Axel and Cedric died during the attack of the caravan. What happened to Schrödinger is unknown. Aiden would be killed by a band of criminals led by Yat Karadin, another witcher whose life depended on Geralt of Rivia. We don't know what happened to the founder of the school, Gasros of Leda. The only cat witcher we know still lives, guaranteed, is Joel, a witcher with whom Gaetan was in contact after the school fell. There are a few unnamed cat school witchers that are still out there, as a few of them were chasing Alexander after he had committed his treason against the cat school. Due to the traveling nature of the cat school, it is hard to know what is going on there. Returning to Stega Castle is not an option for the School of the Cat, because of the Lord of Sorceresses, who, in 1268, had sent Kiramats, Sabrina Glavisic, and Triss Marigold to wipe the castle off the map, destroying any evidence of it to further promote their own narrative of the events with Vilgefortz. The Cat School has given the Witchers a bad reputation with their massacres and killing of humans, which was also partly due to the fact they would prefer taking contracts from elves and dwarves over taking contracts from humans, as they had a fair amount of incidents with humans not wanting to pay, and instead tried to kill the Witcher or pay them in catnip.
Are you fucking kidding me? Catnip instead of crowns?
One of the most prominent alliances with the elves was during Elarin's uprising, when they aided the elf in her fight for freedom. But what do you think of the School of the Cat? Till the next video. Bye.